I was excited, and I am excited, and I just want you to roll because I know it's divine and I know it's necessary, and I want everybody that's going to listen to this to really listen closely. But Sister B.L. Carter, thank you so much for your time, and I'm all ears right now.
Okay, great. Well, hello, brother man, and the rest of the fam. Just wanted to, I guess, share some information, some things I've been thinking about, toying with, meditating on, and getting a lot of stuff just dropped in my spirit over a period of time, and things starting to culminate. And just a little bit of background on some of the things. I know some of this stuff I would have brought to certain pastors or certain spiritual leaders along the way, and the responses would be things like, you don't believe in God, you've been listening to too many people, what books have you been reading? Have you been reading those books that have been left out of the Bible, and disobedience and that sort of thing? So I hear them, and I keep it moving because I know what I'm hearing, I know what I'm feeling. And then, I thought back to some years back, actually, I was looking at one of the newer translations of the Bible, and I can't remember which one because it's probably about 100 of them by now. And I noticed very clearly certain scriptures had been left out. And I went back to one of my study Bibles from, some years ago, and I knew and the scripture was there. And then I went back to a King James Bible, and I see the scriptures there. But I see this new Bible, the scripture is out. And that was my first sign that, wait a minute, something is wrong. In that if a book is that critical and that important and that much of a piece of history, if you will, what gives someone the right to take away from it? And then if they're taken away from it now, I have to question the validity of the entire thing, because how much has been taken away or added prior to my even coming into contact with it. And that's not to say I don't believe in the Bible, etc. That's just to say that was a red flag to me to start paying attention. And so I've done a little bit of comparison between the different versions. I've got probably about 4 or 5 versions around here. And I've seen, some scriptures removed, some scriptures expounded upon just in a way that I necessarily wouldn't be comfortable with. But so again, that just makes you wonder. But, that's just basic common sense. But here more recently, in this last week or so, as I was sharing with Brother Lance, a video by, I think the channel is Truth Unveiled 777. And he had a video up about the churches and the FEMA camps and the connections and things like that. And he pulled a lot of documentation, stuff that I'd either seen along the way or had reference to, but just never took the time to collect it all up in one place. And so I thank him for that. But it was talking about how the churches are basically, in a nutshell, my takeaway from it was that, the churches have been bought out. And that was just confirmation for me in that I've been feeling all along, or for some time now, that the churches are, God has left the building from many of the churches. And not all of them, but from many of them. They're being run by, their businesses, and they're being run by people with intent to serve their own purposes and not necessarily the purposes of the people or the communities in which they reside. And so that just got me to thinking. I was thinking about the Trump meeting that was held maybe, 2 months ago now, where he called in all the church leaders, or not all, but certain church leaders, to a roundtable discussion. I think they were supposedly discussing prison reform. And I didn't follow up on whatever came out of it. I know Pastor John Gray was there, and I can't remember who else was there. But I remember my first thoughts were, what qualifies these people to be sitting at a table for prison reform? They're pastors of a church. Do they have a criminal background? Do they have a background in criminology? Do they have psychology backgrounds or deviant psychology backgrounds? Why this select group of people? And My other question was, well, what was discussed at the meeting? And how is it then that there's this meeting of these black church pastors, church leaders, and they're definitely not all the stakeholders when you talk about prison reform. You've got a lot of white Caucasian uh, religious leaders. You've got the prison owners for all the privatized sections, as well as the appropriate people for those that are still governmental. You've got other community stakeholders that should be in on this meeting. So, what is the purpose of having a meeting for only the black religious leaders under the auspices of prison reform? How effective is that meeting, or is a meeting for show, or what was the point of it? So it just popped in my head, and I'll just leave it out there because again, it's just food for thought for you all. But something else that came up, the 501c3s. Now this had been on my mind, but what is a 501c3? It's that organization that makes, I'm sorry, it's that piece of paper. It's that designation that you get from the federal government that makes you an organization that's supposedly nonprofit and exempts you from paying taxes on the monies that you receive. Wherever you receive them from, however you get them, however much it is, you don't pay taxes on it. And there were some other rules and regulations and a whole bunch of paperwork that you go through. But some of the biggies in that, and this is what I kind of came to the conclusion, that 501c3 is how the churches were bought out. Their silence was bought. Their compliance was bought. Their assistance in controlling the masses was bought using that 501c3. Because with that, the government controls what the church can teach. It controls what they can and cannot say from the pulpit. The government is able to keep tabs on people that may need to be watched. Why? Through the connection that they have with that pastor or the leadership in that church or that church organization. They are required, they're mandated reporters, obviously, for abuse and things like that. But what else are they required to give to share back with the governmental authorities, and at which points are they given this information? I know the church that I've been talking about recently will stand up and give your personal information publicly from the pulpit. So if they'll share it with any Tom, Dick, and Joe that walks in the door, of course they're going to give it to any governmental agency because they're going to keep their money the way they need their money to be. I thought about armament. There's been a lot of talk about gun control, etc. Well, I personally believe in the right to bear arms. I believe in my personal individual right to bear arms, as well as the state militias and things like that the Constitution allows for, in as much as the Constitution may or may not still be valid anymore. But it's like that 501c3 is disarming the people, not necessarily with physical arms, but with the ability to fight back emotionally, socially, politically, because the pastors are pacifying people. They're telling people, stuff happens to you, well, it's okay, just pray about it, it'll be all right, God will fix it. Or just pray about it, it'll be better in the afterlife. And that takes me back to slavery. That's exactly what happened when, the slaves were introduced to Christianity and taught, well, just pray it out, and this will all be over. This hell that you're going through while you're alive will be over. Once you die, you get to go to heaven. So it just, it just popped back up in my head again, how the churches are disarming people emotionally, psychologically, spiritually. They're just teaching people to be complicit with being mistreated. And that's from the government and from, if you want to go good, evil, from Satan. They're not teaching you to fight back spiritually. A lot of them, they're completely, I won't say ignoring Satan and the evil, but they're not telling you the methods in which he and his minions are using to get to you or destroy you or take you down or whatever he is, whatever, whatever it is he's doing. They're not telling you that. They're not giving any time into him at all. More recently, we've got the charismatic preachers, the prosperity and the love you one another and forgive your neighbor no matter what they've done to you. Forgive, not your neighbor, your brother. I'm sorry. No matter what they've done, just forgive and move on, forgive and move on. Well, we know from a psychological standpoint that doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
People don't forgive, first of all, if whatever the transgression is has not been acknowledged. They carry that, and over a period of time, they've got so much baggage on them that they can't forgive anything. They can't even let anything in, let alone anything out. So in the long run, that hurts them. And these pastors are being trained. When I did go ahead and download the training manual from, I believe it was 2006. FEMA had with the religious leaders. And this training manual very clearly gave them, for those who didn't have a psychological background, gave them some specifics on trauma and how to identify trauma and things like that. But it very clearly said to them, when you see people with these signs, refer them to mental health. Keep tabs on this, watch out for this, et cetera, et cetera. And it kind of made me concerned. Because instead of teaching the pastors, okay, when you see someone that shows signs of depression, this is how you need to reach them, this is how you need to re-engage them. And obviously, if they're suicidal or homicidal, you might want to take some more action. But if it's just a depression, I didn't see in that document where they were telling the pastors, okay, well, here's some step-by-step things that you can do to get your person out of depression. No, the referral was the recommendation was to refer them to mental health. So you sending them back to the government to get assistance with what it is. And we know when they get to mental health, they're going to be given a pill and their name added to a list. So, all of that was just kind of playing around in my head. And then I thought about it again. This 501c3, in a nutshell, keeps our communities in disarray. We are not any better. Actually, we're worse probably than back during the 50s and 60s civil rights movements. The churches, even during the time of slavery, was our place of congregation. That's where we met. During the time of slavery, they had secret signs and kind of unwritten languages and symbols and stuff that they shared to communicate with each other. But as slavery, as we knew it, ended, and then we moved into the other times, the church was the one place where we all met. We were able to discuss the political issues, the social issues, the economic issues. We were able to strategize, to plan, and put into effect any kind of plans to do what we needed to do for our communities. So we had our schools, we had our Black Wall Streets, we had our Rosewoods, we had, our areas that I can't call the name of the place in North Carolina. I think it's in the Durham area, where, we just had a whole thriving community, self-sufficient. And where did we meet to put these plans in place? In church. There was nowhere else for us to meet. We went to church, we said our prayers, and then afterwards there was a meeting, or if there was an issue going on, okay, town hall meeting, or, us blacks, we're going to meet at the church Tuesday night at 5 o'clock because, this so-and-so's son has been lynched wrongly, and we need to talk about how we're going to handle it collectively. Well, all that's taken away at the 50C3. They don't get to talk political. They don't get to, not as a group. Maybe one-on-one in the office or, 2 or 3 in a small conversation. But as far as from the pulpit or having those kinds of meetings, they don't get to do that in the church as long as they've got that 501c3 designation. So we've basically been sold out. And I even started to think to myself, well, how did the meeting go? When they came up with this 501c3 thing, did they present it to the churches? Hey, well, you control the people. You can get all you want. You can do whatever you want. Do it under the name of a church. Get whatever money you want, and we won't touch it. We won't tax it. As long as you keep them in bondage, we won't even hold you accountable for the stuff that you do. You just go ahead and do it. And I just have to wonder, how did the churches agree to that? I wonder if you're at a level where you're really spiritually seeking divine guidance, whomever your God may be, then you had to have had some kind of inkling somewhere along the lines of maybe we should not do this 501c3 thing. Maybe we should maintain ourselves separate from the government. There was a reason why we had separation of church and state. And so that we can continue to do for our communities, and we'll pay what we need to pay. So we're paying the price. How do they say, pay the cost to be the boss? We're paying the cost to be the bosses of our people in our communities.
Mm-hmm.
And I just, all of that was just tossing around. It, in my mind was just all of this stuff. It had been kind of floating around in my mind the last couple of months. But after I saw that video the other morning, it just all just, can I say, flooded, and I couldn't get it out of my mind. And like I mentioned the mental health, but I was going to go a little further with this. The mental health, when you're referred to mental health, and I don't know how many people know this, but as soon as you go into mental health and you get some kind of diagnosis, and trust, when you walk in the door, you're going to come out with a diagnosis, because that's the objective. That is the one way that they can physically disarm people. Too many folk are fighting against them taking away that Second Amendment right to bear arms. Black, white, green, yellow, Republican, Democrat, no matter what your position is, politically, socially, economically, people are maintaining, they're fighting to keep that right to bear arms in masses. So they can't disarm the people that way. So they're doing it, backdooring it in through things like mental health. Besides the fact of being given the drugs, which are limiting your mental capacity in the long run overall, destroying your body, tearing up your endocrine system, your immune system, it's also putting you on a list where you can't bear arms. Why not? Because you're messed up in the head and you're not sane enough to be able to handle a firearm. Or and there are some other things that are taken away if you have certain mental health diagnoses. And then, they kind of added back in there, well, yeah, you can get your firearms license or your concealed carry, whatever state that you're in, CCL, CCW, CHL, whatever it is, or own a firearm in your home for your basic protection if you show us for X amount of time that you've been cleared and healed, so to speak, or in remission from whatever your mental health issue was. Well, here's my issue with that. Let's say you have a death. Let's say your parent passes away. And, oftentimes that's usually one of those harder ones. So you may spend, or if you're married 50 years and your spouse passes away, someone that you've got that strong a bond with,
Yes.
you could very well wind up being in depression for 6 months to a year.
Longer than
Not
that.
depression to the point that you're hurting someone, but depression to the point where you just can't get it together. Everything is just not working out right for you. And because you're trying to deal with that loss, you're trying to create whatever life is going forward, and you're struggling with it. So what do? You go see a counselor, because it makes sense to do it. And another video I'll tell you why I personally think everyone should have a mental health counselor. But there's a certain way to do it to maintain your privacy. And so you go see them, and you seek help. You get a safe place where you can dump your thoughts, your feelings, your struggles, your weaknesses, your fears, whatever it is you're dealing with, and maybe get some help trying to kind of get you back to life. Doesn't mean you're a threat to anybody. You're not a threat to anyone else. You're not a threat to yourself. You just don't know how to do life without your dad. He's been dad from day one. You're 40 years old. He's been there. He was there for your weddings, your babies, your graduations, if a roach crawls on the wall, you call him, he's right there. That's just how tight you guys were. You fished, you traveled, you did everything, and now he's gone. And it's like, I can't replace him. How do I live life without him? And you're trying to figure it out, and that's the purpose of going and dealing with the mental health people. Well, suppose they say to you, you know what? Let's recommend a little antidepressant just to kind of put you on even keel, so at least you can do the basic functioning. You can at least go to work. You can get up out of bed. and then, we'll continue to talk through the rest of it until we get you to where you can do it on your own. The physical ramifications aside, now you're on record for having had to take whatever, Risperdal, Prozac, Ritalin, I can't even call the name of some other, Haldol, who knows, whatever they are. So you're on record for having to take this medicine not for some physiological condition, but for a mental condition. Do you think the government don't know about that? They keep tabs on that stuff.
Of course.
And so forever and a day, you have this label. And they don't take that label away. It takes an act of Congress almost to get the label taken away. And actually what they do is they say it's been in remission. Because once you have a condition, you can't unhave the condition. You can only put it in remission.
It's true.
And so those are the things, I just have to wonder, are these religious organizations aware of the position that they're putting the people in, or that they've put the people in? And I ask myself, with so many of them, we've got degrees all over the place, and we're not talking, the mail-bought Masters of Divinity online from somebody you send them $100 and they send you a fake master's degree or something. We're talking ones who've actually spent money at the institutions and earned their masters and PhDs. They had to do some thinking because those things require research. They require analytical processes. They require stats. They require just some deeper level of thought. And so that started making me wonder, gosh, they've got to be aware of this. They know what they're doing. This is not accidental. This is not by chance. Oh, well, we didn't know what the government was planning. You got to know what the government was planning. It is your job, first of all, as a pastor, to know these things, or as a religious leader. It is your job to be on your face in front of God 3 o'clock in the morning every night, or whatever your frequency is, to seek wisdom and guidance in how to lead your flock. So if you're not doing it, then I have to wonder, are you doing that? Are you doing your job in that capacity? And then second, as a person who should be educated, this is common sense. You don't get to be a certain age and see all these things going on in the world and you haven't questioned and wondered. And so my question then becomes, why haven't you turned back in that 501c3 and said, no, thank you, we'll do it solo? If you're up and up on the legit and you're really concerned about the people, why have you not handed them back that 501c3, filed your taxes come March 15th every year like everybody else, and said, no, thank you? You're continuing because it's comfortable now. Whatever you're doing, whatever's working for you, whatever stuff you've attained, whatever power, authority, notoriety, fame you've attained, you don't want to give it up. And so now it's got you, and you're going to continue to sacrifice your people to keep it. You're leading them into foolishness or into basically the slaughter. And it's so strange because those are the words that were used twice this week. Once the other day in that video, and again today when I went to that church. That pastor made a reference about being careful of being led to slaughter, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's why I said this was just confirmation. I just think that and not only are you keeping them in disarray by them not being able to have a meeting place, a safe meeting place to come and discuss the political, the financial, the social, all those issues that we really need a place, a consistent place to come and discuss and strategize about.
Right.
But you're also keeping them in sin. You're keeping them in their lies and their deceit and their lust and their whoredoms and everything else. You're not trying to deal with that either. So if we want to say they're being led to slaughter, they're being led to slaughter physically and spiritually.
On all levels.
On all levels. And that's some serious. Yeah, we gotta wake up from this. And I'm not saying walk away from the church. You have to, whomever you are, you have to seek your God. I'd like to say God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. There's so many names floating around. There's so many imposters. There's so much of all of this going on. So let me go back to a time frame when I pretty much am comfortable to say that was the right God back then, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And that's who I go to. And, give me guidance. I'm feeling this. I'm sensing this. This is what I've got. Am I correct? Am I going in the right direction, et cetera, et cetera? Everyone has to do that. The Bible already tells you study to show yourself approved anyway. The word already tells you to hide the word in your heart because the time's going to come where you're going to need it and the Bible won't be available for you to go look it up. So if you're doing these things already, you should be able to get guidance and be able to put common sense with it and say something's not right. We need to step away from this. So this call to come out the churches, I don't know, y'all. People might want to pay attention to it. But I don't know if people have noticed, for the longest, pastors were staying away from mental health. I even remember pastors saying if there's a mental health issue, it's not really mental health, it's a spiritual issue. You're not praying enough. That's your issue.
Wow.
Just pray you're going to be all right. And then all of a sudden, I saw a flip. Now, I'm mental health trained. Back in my law enforcement days, I was a certified mental health officer. I was one of those who was called when there was a mental health person that needed to be dealt with. And I see now that they're having more mental health task force on the different police departments and in the churches and schools and everywhere else now. Does it not strike someone strange that we've got such, and money is in mental health. The federal government has been pumping money into mental health. Well, they're starting to pull it out now, but at one point they were pumping a lot of money into mental health. So that everyone, anytime you see one symptom that might look like there's a mental problem, we getting somebody in for care and treatment and their special cocktail of pills. Has it not rung strange to anybody that all of a sudden there's a rash of mental health issues, mental health diagnoses, even to the point of the church? Instead of them praying over you, and if they feel like you got a demon, doing an exorcism or whatever it is they need to do to lay hands and call it out. They're not doing that. They're saying you will go see a psychologist and, or psychiatrist and see what they recommend, et cetera, et cetera. That's a problem. That's a problem. Because truth be told, the Bible does teach us that, well, you add the Bible, you add biology, and you add common sense. Disease. What is a disease? A disease is when your body is not at ease. It is in dis-ease. Something is wrong. We know that. That's foundational. Well, what may be wrong? The Bible also teaches us everything that's wrong with you, everything that's wrong with you is a spiritual battle. So if it's a spiritual something that's going on, you're fighting what? Principalities and rulers and wickedness in high places? Well, you're fighting demonic stuff. If they're reading this, if they're studied as their titles and they're all these letters behind their names say they are, why aren't they raising these things and why aren't they addressing it at that level? No, they'll toss you to the side and send you to go get a pill. Or is it that they know they have no power against that? Maybe their training is not what they want you to think the training is. My personal belief, anything that alters your state of mind is a drug, period. Whether it's marijuana, whether it's the music, those certain chords they hit in when you're in praise and worship, whether it's a man, whatever it is, if it alters your state of mind, it's a drug. Drugs have the potential to become addictive and get you off track. For me, no thank you. I don't want it.
That's right.
That's just my personal philosophy.
That's the way I am too. I'm with you on that.
But it's just, my mind was just blown. And as I was thinking about all of that, I thought about one particular church in the Houston area, Windsor Village United Methodist Church. And I don't know how far the news made it, but he's been charged with, I want to say, some SEC violations or something. Now, this particular church is a pretty large church. Now, I don't know the ins and outs. I've never been a member. I have visited. I do know someone that attends there. And actually, I did I think, my last mental health disability conference there. Yeah, the last one that I attended was there. And this particular pastor, like I said, he was charged with some SEC violations, but he has led his congregation and his members into working in the community. You see their work. You see the neighborhood has cleaned up quite a bit. A lot of the abandoned storefronts and what you call them, the strip malls and things like that, they've bought them out and they've converted them and doing things with them. You see the services and programmings in their building. If you go into that building, or I think probably they even have a lot of it listed on the website, there are so many services and programs and resources available to the people. And one particular family that I know that attends that church, actually I know two people that attend. One was a minister there, and she's now moved. But the other two were ministers elsewhere, and now they're at Windsor Village. And so in knowing them, I visited for various programs or whatever. And I see the services. I see the programming going on. I see the effect in the community. I see that they have an entire building. I don't know if it's a family life center or whatever they call the building. They've got different little wings to there. They've got a really, really big building and different wings to it. I see they have an entire financial planning department, if you will, where members come in and they sit down and, okay, well, this is what my credit looks like. Okay, well, you get assigned a credit counselor to help you fix your credit. These are my goals to buy a house in 3 years. Okay, well, let's map out your route to get there. And that may include fixing your credit. It may include, changing your budget or even getting a budget. It may include changing jobs, just whatever it is, solutions tailored to the people. Now, they don't shove it down your throat. If you want it, it's available. But I don't recall them shoving anything down anybody's throat saying, y'all better come do this. But wealth building seminars. I remember attending a wealth building seminar at that church. And it wasn't so much a matter of prosperity preaching. It was a matter of, if you have a desire to be at a certain financial standing and position your children to have certain finances as they're going to college and get starting life, let's talk about some ways in which you can do it legally, of course. And so that's available to those members. And I believe the community, because I'm not a member and I was able to go to some of these things as well. So I would say for the community. They have a clinic on site, sliding scale. They take insurance as well. But if you don't have insurance and you're low income, sliding scale. So you can go in and get dental work done. You can go in and get physical health checkups and if you've got basically like what they call them chronic diseases and stuff, they'll help you manage those, help you figure out life with your conditions, as well as, and they do have psychologists, the whole mental health arena as well. This is on site at the church, at the whole one of those buildings that kind of do all of this stuff during the week and stuff that's not on Sundays. So I see them actually putting something into motion. They don't do Halloween. They don't do Christmas, Easter, and all of those holidays. They don't. As a church, they do not celebrate them.
They shouldn't.
And they teach their members those. Well, a lot of churches still do.
I know.
And so when I hear those kinds of things, it says to me, maybe that is a church that's trying to stay, closer in accordance with what's biblical, or to be as far away from Satan stuff as possible. That's what I think of. And then I see Kirby John Caldwell, that's the senior pastor there, is charged with these SEC violations. And honestly, I've not taken the time to talk with the members that, may know a little bit more than what's in the news, et cetera. But I say the fact that this man has and his leadership team have stepped out and said, okay, we're not going to leave our people behind. We're going to clean our people up. We're going to clean our communities up. We're going to provide services. The YMCA next door to them, they've pretty much adopted that Y. And so from what I understand, they've got some kind of deal worked out where kids who don't have money for YMCA membership, they're in there. It's a done deal. You go through the church and you're in there. So they have all the YMC programming. There's a daycare program, day camp, I think, summer camp program, and then after school child care type of thing, all going on there through the Y that the church is assisting families with paying for so that they can work or they can, do whatever it is that needs to get done. A lot of churches are not doing this, especially the black churches. So I have to wonder if this supposed SEC violation charge with Pastor Kirby John is not related to them not playing ball anymore or them not playing ball to the degree of leaving the people behind. That's just my thought.
It looks obvious to me,
And then my mind went to Romans 13. You open your Bible, and any one of you that's listening to this today, tomorrow, whenever you listen to this again, open your Bible to Romans chapter 13, and you will see very clearly how the government has taken this, and I'm going to say the government has taken it. I will say someone has taken it, and they've extrapolated so much. In the initial, back to the 1599 Geneva Bible, Romans 13 does say, obey the powers. Actually, it doesn't say the government. It says obey the powers that are in place to rule over you because God has put them in place. And if you go back to the Old Testament, we did have judges. The purpose of judges, and Solomon was a judge at one more king at one point, and his job is to, if there's an issue or disagreement, to make the decision. We know about his because he was the one that the two women were fighting over a child, and he said, okay, I can't decide, we'll just cut the baby in half. And the real mother said, no, I can't bear to watch that. I'll give up my child, and instead of watching my child be killed. And so that's how he knew which mother to give the child to. But so we've had, from the time that there was a need, we've had judges, we've had a governmental authority. We know the Bible also says, render unto Caesar what is Caesar's. We know there was King Herod and all these other kings and stuff. So there's been a hierarchy in some level of government. But if you look at the new versions of the Bible, they've extrapolated that to, obey the government. God put them here. And yes, God put a government, but did he put the government that we see today in place? I think not. There is no government anywhere that God has not placed in power. If you refuse to obey the laws of the land, then you're refusing to obey God, and you will be punished. The policeman does not frighten the people who are doing right. Only the people who are scared of the police, and only the people who are doing wrong are scared of the police. So does that say inherently because I'm driving black and I happen actually to still be in this brand spanking new 2019 truck and I get pulled over if I'm in the wrong part of town, I'm doing wrong? No. I'm scared because I know my color and I know I'm driving this vehicle and I know I didn't break any laws and I know this is a spot check and an intent to try to get in my business and look for stuff. So I'm automatically afraid. But here's the other deal. You could be a white boy in the middle of redneck country and those blue lights get kicked on you, there's some bit of fear that comes over you, period, no matter who you are. That's just a blue light effect on everybody. So there's some level of fear. But for it to be biblically here that only those who are doing wrong are afraid of the police. So if you're not afraid, then that means you must be doing right. Or if you don't want to be afraid, then, do right, keep the law, and you'll be fine. God sent the police to help us. This is what the Bible said. God sent the police to help us. Last I checked, the police came about during slavery and runaways and all that other good stuff. So
overseers.
Excuse me. But this is what's in the Bible now. And this is what FEMA, federal government, is having the pastors to drill into the people. Of course, if you're doing something wrong, you should be afraid because God's going to have you punished. The police is sent for that very purpose, to punish you because you did not obey the law or you did something wrong. So bottom line, you obey the law for two reasons. One, so that you don't get punished, and second, because you should. It goes on to say, pay your taxes for the same reasons. Government workers need to be paid so that they can do God's work serving you. Okay, so last I checked, when a CPS person follows a bogus anonymous complaint that I'm abusing my kids and they show up at my door with the police to take my children without question, without investigation, and it's under an administrative code, which means I don't have the same rights as I would have in a civil or criminal case. It's pretty much them against me, and I'm blindsided. And but I need to pay my taxes so I can pay their salary to serve me. People need to wake up. Wake up to what they're continuing to submit unto.
Those are some
And I
great
just sit
points.
there and I think, I'm sorry?
No, those are some great points. I mean, when you really look at it that way, but like again, so many of us are just so not aware of how this hierarchy has slipped into this, or the potential situations where we have no power. We have this belief that the police are there for us, and what their main goal is, what their main order is. And it's very interesting, and I must say it again, that you are technically for law enforcement, but you never stop thinking that way from when you learn what you learn, and for you to apply what you already know, which is vast, to what you're saying and making complete sense out of it. I don't see how anyone could reject what you're saying and the dots that you are connecting.
It's just it, brainwashing. That's the only way they can reject it is brainwashing. But what I just, and those were excerpts, I read that from the Living Bible translation. And I did a quick scan of a couple other translations as well. And I can see, like I said, back from the Geneva versions, 1599, and then the 1611 King James, and on through several of them, I see when it started to change. And over time, the wording changes. So remember when we first started, what did I say? It's a concern when scriptures are left out or added or words are changed. Well, a word may mean something today. 20 years from now, it's going to mean something totally different. So when this generation passes away, the new generation doesn't know the original meaning of that word. And so they'll give you they'll switch the word with something that's not quite a synonym. It's similar, has similar meaning, but it's not quite the same. Put that word in place. One generation dies out. Next generation comes along. They don't know the true history, and they get sucked in with a different word and a different connotation and a different action. Language is very important. Our words are very important, where these words derive from. But in just that little piece of Romans 13 I just read out, and that's the one thing that I printed out in preparation for this. My conflicts, homosexuality. Now again, Bible says homosexuality is wrong. People do what they want to do. You live your life. I have a first cousin who's homosexual, or was. He's passed away now. And I would have to say the love of my life as far as cousins go. And probably one of the most devastating passings that I personally had to endure. That's just how close we were. His sexuality had nothing to do with me. It is what it is. But the Bible says you ain't supposed to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Anatomically, you're not supposed to do it because it just doesn't make sense. If you're having sex to procreate, then how do you procreate when you're female, or male? But you choose to do it, that's okay. The law now says homosexuality is okay, and we must allow them to marry. So if that in itself conflicts with other areas of the Bible, help me understand how Romans 13 says we must obey the law, and if we don't obey the law, we're not being obedient to God. So do we be obedient to God and obey this law that conflicts with other areas of the Bible? That's a question. That is a question. That's why Romans 13 is so, it's just pedophilia. They're about to legalize that. Working
Oh,
on it right now. We've already added a mental health diagnoses, and so once it becomes a disease, a medical condition that they can actually give you a drug for or have an excuse for, in a minute it's going to be legal.
and you
There's
know
could
what's
be some justification for it.
bestiality? Bestiality comes behind pedophilia.
Bestiality, exactly. These things are non-biblical. So if they're non-biblical, then how is it that Romans 13 tells us to obey every law, all the stuff that the government is telling us to do, and if we don't, then we're not in accordance with God? That's a direct conflict. What about the use of drugs? The Bible very clearly tells us we know drugs come from what? The Greek and Latin words, origins, pharmacia or pharmakia, depending on how you pronounce it, and they reference poison, magic spells, witchcraft, sorcery, all that whole arena. But we go to Walgreens, CVS, Walmart, and everywhere else, Kroger, wherever you go, and you get your monthly dose of spells and witchcraft and sorcery. That's legal. The government has legalized that. And actually, if you're mental health and you don't take it, they could force medicate you. They do it. But the Bible also says that we're not supposed to partake in those things. We're not supposed to partake in anything that's witchcraft or sorcery or magic spells and poisons and things like that, and potions and necromancy, and you name it. It goes on and on and on. So help me to understand then the conflict. I'm not getting it. So my main question, my main takeaway from that was, well, who is God? If they're saying we're supposed to obey all these things, which we know right now there are several laws on the books that conflict with other areas of the Bible and have always conflicted, who is the God in this book, in Romans 13? And then that lends the question, who is the God in the Bible overall? Who's Old Testament, who's New Testament? There's some talk about there being a different God and excuse me, God having been replaced, because God was never his name. We know that if we go back to old scripture, it was never his name. He's the I am, the Yahweh, that some other names, but it was never God. And Jesus comes into the picture. Well, he was more the Messiah. Jesus, we know the letter J didn't exist, and all of that, and so that's a whole nother show. I won't get into all of that. But people, people wake up, start thinking, put these pieces together, start connecting your own dots. Scattering of the sheep, it's leading them to slaughter. Just, I think I said this once before, and I know I've addressed this with the pastor at the church I just left. The behavior that goes on in the church is such to where people have no desire to remain there. There's no incentive to remain on a path of righteousness and godliness and holiness if you're doing the same thing you're going to do out in the street. And just this week, actually, just this week, this scattering of the sheep and leading the sheep to slaughter, like I said, came up twice, the other day and then again today. These pastors, or not these pastors, some of these churches, God is not pleased, whoever God may be, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, he's not pleased with this. People are being scattered. When they leave, they're hurt, they're broken, they're worse than they were when they first came. And now they're out in the world like leaves, blowing in the wind, left to be devoured and plundered. Devoured by who? The world, by evil and whatever evil forces and powers that are around them. So again, are they not leading these people to slaughter by just the way in which they're treated or not treated? It's just, then I think about the U.S. Foundation way back in whatever dates, don't get me to line about the numbers, but when this country was founded, when we broke away from Great Britain during the time of the Boston Tea Party and all of that. I forget the dates. But some of the concerns were taxation without representation, freedom of religion, et cetera, et cetera. Well, the founding fathers, when they founded the United States, I think there were some references in the Articles of Confederation and then again in the actual Constitution, and then, of course, came back with the amendments. There were some concerns about tyranny and an overreaching government. And so they created these three branches of government to keep a check and balance, to keep accountability. You know, you've got judicial, executive, and legislative. You've got three different branches, and the purpose is what? To have a check and balance, to keep accountability. Well, we pretty much know they all been bought out, or most of them, I'd say. But the other thing that the founding fathers put into the Constitution was the right for militias, for states to have equal and well-established, is the correct wording, I think, well-established militias. What's the purpose of that? For states to be able to rise up against the federal government in tyranny or dictatorship or totalitarianism, because A, they saw it with Great Britain, and B, they didn't want to go down that route again. So they wanted to make sure they put that in place. So here's my thinking then. If the Constitution, and we have to question how strong it is today because it's been watered and weakened and weakened and weakened and weakened. If it gives us that, why is it then it must be taken away at this point? What is the push for the government to take away the well-formed, well-established militias independent of them? Because if people haven't paid attention, the National Guard is a direct route into the regular military. They look like them. They dress like them. They use the same equipment as them. It's almost no different, if you will. And there are some differences. Yeah, they're technically paid by the state. They answer to the state, but the state pipes right on up red. They got a red phone up there in Washington, D.C. as well. So that's been merged together. And we just have to wonder. You have to wonder. These pieces got to be coming into people's heads. Constitution also says to us that, how does it say? I forget which amendment. I want to say it's the 9th. Not an amendment. Bill of Rights. The 9th, maybe the 8th. Don't get me the line which one. I want to say it's either the 9th or the 10th. Whatever rights that were not given specifically to the federal government and not specifically prohibited by the federal government resides with the people. So therefore, resides with the states. So that means if they did not explicitly say to the federal government, this is a yes or no, that right resides with the states. If they did not, and the next one, 9 and 10, both of them pretty much say
10.
whatever right. Is
Yes.
it 10?
You have
okay,
10.
So then it's 9 that addresses the people. One addresses the states, one addresses the people.
Here it is. It's Amendment 10, undelegated powers kept by the states and the people. The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people.
To the states respectively or to the people. So what's so the one right before that, that's 10, and number 9 should say the list of rights that are not actually enumerated or actually listed out in the Constitution. It's not necessarily all inclusive, and that means
Amendment 9. That's others' rights kept by the people. The enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people.
Right. So I say all that to say we still have power. Even though all of this is going on, we still have power. We just need to use it. We're not paying attention. Now, and again, the Constitution is the UN is doing everything they can to take away every single right in that Constitution. And these executive orders, one by one, the Patriot Act, And all these other acts along the way are doing everything they can to take that Constitution down piece by piece by piece. But you still have some power. And people should start exercising it. Pay attention. See what's happening. I wonder, did people forget the Tuskegee experiment? Black folk in Tuskegee, Alabama, black men, were specifically given syphilis, and they were lied to about a treatment. They were basically getting a placebo. And the government watched the process, the progress of that disease from the moment of contraction to the moment of those men dying. And then they spread it to their families, their wives, their girlfriends, or whomever else, and just spread it even further. And guess who did it? The doctors, the nurses, they were black. They used us against our own people. And we knew it. We bought and sold our own people out. And guess who they used to help convince the people to volunteer for the experiments or for this new medical treatment? The churches. They used the pastors and the local black community leaders to go to these people and say, hey, it's a good idea to do this. That's how they got them in on it. So people wake up. If your government, they've shown you slavery, they've shown you refusal to give reparations, although they've rebuilt Japan and they've got Japanese all over the country giving them everything. They've got Chinese over here giving them everything. The Vietnamese over here giving them everything. Even the Germans, they done took all their research, they brought it over here and using it to reestablish a whole new Nazi Germany over here. Even Russia now, we got some little topsy-turvy going on with Russia right now, but the United States is in collusion with Russia. Behind the scenes, there's some other stuff going on back and forth. The Jews, they done give the Jews the whole world, if you will. Whatever everybody asks for, they get. Even the Indians, even if they're on a reservation, they still get certain funds. All you have to do is prove that you have Indian lineage, and you automatically eligible for certain grants, certain business loans up to a certain dollar amount. I can't remember the dollar amount because there's some heritage, and at one point I looked at going that route, and some other things. You get into a crime or get into trouble with the law, you can petition and try to have your matter resolved in tribunal court that's on the reservation with their courts instead of out in the population with the regular county courts or city courts. So they're even making some kind of concessions to them. But they still ain't get black folk no concessions. And so they're showing you over and over and over again, and they're training everybody else that comes here to dog you out as well. And you ain't opened your eyes yet to see, to ask yourself, how are they doing it? How are they continually able to keep us down? Yeah, the man won't give us nothing. The man won't let us have. Well, first of all, you got to try to get. Seeking you shall find, knocking the door shall be open, asking shall be given. You got to work for it. But by the same token, we have to be careful of who's in our circle on a day-to-day. Who's influencing us? What are we listening to? And I'm not saying don't listen to your pastor, but I'm saying you listen, and listen good. And then listen to what all he didn't say. And listen to everything you see him do, because that tells a story as well. Listen to everything you see him not do, because that's telling you a story as well. And then not just him. Go to the next pastor. Go to the next pastor. Keep looking before we just settle for, okay, well, I guess I'm supposed to be in this rental apartment for the rest of my life, and I'm not supposed to do any more. My mama didn't do no more. Grandmama didn't do no more. I ain't supposed to do no more. We are bigger than that. We are better than that. We were destined for more than that. We know our history says it. So how is it okay that we continue to sit back and not? I don't care how much common sense you don't have. If you in this world, you got enough common sense to say something's wrong and you're doing something. You need to be doing something different. Not you per se. That's all of us. If what we've done or been doing is not working, then we've got to do something different. You're in a box. You have no money. Take me for example. I have no money. I'm living on the street. I'm homeless. This is an example. I'm not really homeless, but this is an example. I'm living on the street and I'm homeless and I have no idea where to go, what to do. Okay. But I know what I've done thus far is not working. I still got to do something different. So maybe I need to find a shelter. Or maybe when I hold up my little sign that says I'm hungry, anything helps, and with my little cup, start interacting with the people that are driving by. Hey, well, you know what? This is my situation, but these are my skills. Here's a copy of my resume. I don't have a phone, but you can reach me on this corner. I'm here 7 days a week. Take a stab at it. Do something different. That's just at the lower level, but we take it on up a little higher. You want to do something. You want for those who desire home ownership, but you're giving your tithes and your talents and your offerings and your resources and your treasures and your all of that stuff into the church, and then you're giving some to the Girl Scouts because you got to support your kids, and then you're doing the Boy Scouts because you got to support your neighbor's kids. She supports yours, you got to support hers, and then you're paying, $1,000 a month for a little 2-bedroom apartment. You got your little $500-$600 car note. You got high insurance because you got a lot of tickets and stuff. Wait a minute, start doing some things different. You've got, the cable and you've got all the good channels because you need to watch them all. You've got the brand new, what is it, iPhone 8 we're up to now, or 10 or whatever they're up to. You got the brand new iPhone that you're, $50 a month. That's not a lot. I can pay that plus my $50-$60 bill. There's only $100. Oh, don't forget you got to go to IHOP on Friday night. You got to make the Chinese buffet Sunday after church. Oh, Tuesday is what, $1.29 chicken at one of them churches chicken. We got to go get that. Come on, do something different. You desire a home, do something different because you see your pastor's not helping you get there. Bottom line, period. Let's just cut it to the chase. He's not helping you get there. He's helping himself. He's already there. Chances are you're the one trying to get there. And just like a landlord, the whole rental industry. I used to own rental property. You become successful because you keep, hopefully you keep halfway decent units for people to live in, and you price it just so that they can never save enough money to get their own. So think about that. Anyone else that's draining your resources on a regular basis, would they really position you not to continue giving them your resources? No. Their kids are going to college off of that money. They're, driving to, Vegas for the weekend or flying to Vegas. Or, they're doing a week in Italy real quick. Or down in Nigeria or, doing a safari somewhere in Ghana or Mali or wherever. While you still sitting here trying to get that money together so you can meet those obligations the next month. Your pastor included, as your landlord, your pastor and anyone else that you're giving money to on a regular basis monthly. They have no desire to get you to stop doing that because it suits their needs. People got to wake up. That's the segue into the financial segment that I want to do. But back to this being just led to the slaughter. Well, actually, that tips on to that. How do you prepare yourself if you're constantly being led, your resources are being drained, and you can never position yourself to be your own, to own your own, to have your own, to command your own time on your business? No, you're being trained to continue to be a consumer, a worker on a job. Yeah, some pastors will say, yeah, well, I decree and declare that, God says there's 3 business owners in the house this week. Okay, well, that may very well be. But I tell you what, I've seen some people give up their mid-management careers to start these businesses that the pastor told them God said they were supposed to get, and a year later they were in bankruptcy and almost, losing everything. So be careful what you're hearing. But where I was getting back to when I started talking about the Constitution and saying the power, I advocate voting, vote. Now we know at the federal level, The votes have been bought out. They've already been, that stuff is rigged. A friend of mine, a friend in the IT field, he and I had a discussion, long debate about this electronic voting, and way back, we're going back 20 years ago, so when it was first publicly unveiled. And my position, coming from a security standpoint and a law enforcement standpoint, was now I see a big old back door with this. His position was, oh no, it's going to make things so much easier, and it'll be automated, and the computers don't lie, and they won't be able to rig votes. And boy, are you listening to yourself? I need to call him and ask him if he still feels the same way now. Now that he's actually started delving into the security side of things. But remember, computers do what we tell them to do. They don't operate on their own. They have a program. And now just let me give a quick illustration for those. Those programs could very well be 10, 15,000 lines long. Each line is a separate commandment, or a separate command, a separate instruction to the computer. So those programs could be 10, 15,000 lines long. And yes, there is some, from what I understand, they have people on both sides of the aisle that are supposed to have their representatives check the programs and make sure the programs are all legit and working the way they're supposed to. But let's say somewhere along line number 8,452, there's a particular command that says, for all of those who are voting for what Stacey Abrams is running in Georgia, for Stacey Abrams, and it marks, Stacey gives a number to her. Suppose someone goes and just rims out that statement. And that's just a quick little word, and you put REM in front, boom. And what that does is that ignores that statement. And suppose you turn around and put another little statement in there that says, for all those voting for Stacey Abrams, give her the credit for it, but only do that after every 10th vote, or every 10th time that someone votes for Stacey Abrams. So computer, keep a count and only do it every 10 times. Hey, everything else looks fine. And chances are these people that are scrutinizing these programs, I would hope they're going through line by line, but chances are they're not. Because it's very detailed, and it's usually up to the last minute before they actually get the programs downloaded into the voting machines. So now here's the problem. Just like I could send a virus to your computer, you could send a virus to mine. If those things are connected all the time and they're sending live information into whatever office that's maintained, wherever the repository is for this information, that means that line is established. Just like the information can come out of that voting booth and up to the repository, the information can also be sent back to that voting booth. So just suppose, and I'm just for simplicity, Republicans and Democrat. I'm a Democrat, and I've sent my people in, and they've checked the software, and everything is fine. Suppose during the course of the day, someone is sitting at the repository or somewhere along the way, done hacked into the system, and sending a quick virus that gives a duplicate of the program, but with a quick change. And the quick change would be that statement rimmed out where Stacey Abrams doesn't get her credits, her proper votes, or she doesn't get any votes at all, or whatever the case may be. Well, I can send it, and I can and then there's also a possibility I can tell it to go in and to send it in, and I can tell it to operate for 20 minutes and then shut down, and then revert back to the regular program. Suppose someone's doing that. Where's the check and balance on that? So this whole electronic voting thing, very questionable. However, voting still matters at the local level. We know they did it in Florida for the Bush and Al Gore, I believe it was. And if I remember correctly, who was it? Dick Gregory. I think he ran for office somewhere. And was it him? I don't know if it was him or somebody he was saying had run for office, and that person had gotten like it and so many votes, and then they realized that the program was wrong, and then they went back and corrected it. There was proof there that the programming is doing something, allocating the votes in the wrong place. most people don't pay attention to stuff like that. But why voting matters at the local level? Because at the local level is usually not where they're doing. Now, they may start doing it, but they're not usually doing that at the local level. They're doing it at the presidential level. But your judges, your sheriffs, your representatives, your city council, your county commission, your board of education people, all the local folk that run the day-to-day in the city that you live in, those are the ones you're voting for in these midterm elections. Those are the people that are going to decide the curriculum that your kids get when they're in school. Those are the people that are going to decide the taxes that you pay in the county that you live in, your sales tax, your gas tax, the tax on your utilities. They're impacting all of that stuff. So if we skip the midterms and only go for the president, we know the president's not doing anything for us. He don't give a darn about us. Barack Obama, Donald Trump, Bush, Reagan, none of them, they don't care about us. They don't know who we are. And they're really not trying to find out. It's your local level people. Your judges are the ones who sentence your sons to 20 years in jail for some BS crime. Just like they were voted in, they can be voted out. Your judges are the ones who bogus CPS cases in front of their office, and they know it's bogus, but CPS, a governmental agency, they don't want to go against them. They show up and say, oh, well, the caseworker's not here today. She's out sick. So instead of the judge dismissing the case for lack of evidence, the judge extends it another 6 months. Or the caseworker says, well, Your Honor, I know I had it. I can't find this particular documentation, but I know I had it. The judge says, okay, well, you keep the children another 3 months, and 3 months find it and come back and see me. These people can be voted out just like they were voted in. People are not thinking about that. Your mayors, they appoint, well, your sheriffs are elected, but your police chiefs in some cities, they're appointed by mayors, city council, county commission, just depending on where you are. And in some places, the police chiefs are actually voted in. But either way, if your police chief is appointed, you vote in the people that appoint him. So how about voting someone that has more values similar to yours at your local level? And you have a greater likelihood of getting a police chief who doesn't tolerate running up on black folks, shooting them down for no reason, who's going to immediately maybe put the guy or the officer on admin leave, snatch up the badge, snatch up the firearm, and let them have desk duty. And within a few days, review the evidence and go ahead and make a determination one way or the other. You're terminated, or no, we stand with you and we'll activate all the police resources available to support you. We shouldn't have to be rallying and protesting to get these kinds of things done. But we're doing it now because we sat on our butts for too long and allowed the wrong people to be voted in and put in an infrastructure of all of this hate and this genocide against us. So that's my little voting spiel. Sorry.
Well received.
But all of this just reignited my whole come out from among them and people perish for lack of knowledge, and just beware of all the false prophets and stuff. These churches, they're exploiting people's finances and resources and keeping them economically enslaved in the process. Because, again, like I just said, they can't save up enough to do their own. I personally have recommended that churches do what? Open credit unions, so that your members at least put their money in a place where the money is staying within the community. Over a period of time, you'll be in position to give the little payday loans or personal loans, if you will, the auto loans, and hopefully get to a point where you can give home loans to your members. And the interest they're paying it back into your business, into your organization. You get your board of directors from your congregation. So you keep your money within yourself. People don't even want to go that route. No. You know they're not going to let. Yeah, they will. I mean, there's some red tape to go through, and it's probably going to cost you about, last I checked, about $9,000-$10,000 in all the applications, the attorneys, and all that other stuff to get all the paperwork drawn up. But once it's done, it's done. And of course, you do have to have some seed money to get it started. But I tell you, as as a person, I would be more willing to go into my savings account and pull out $5,000 to invest in that with a church organization than to just hand $5,000 because you need a new AC.
That's right.
Just bottom line, the churches are they've been bought and sold by the government. And using that 501c3, they've just been bought and sold. And so as they continue to exploit us, they're in position really to turn us over to the government when the government says, hey, I need people.
That's right.
Or declares martial law, whatever it is they do. The churches have positioned to just give us up. They've shown us they don't care about us.
It's like a violent bully who came gently and made a threat with a smile on their face. If you don't get down with this,
exactly.
They're telling what you can do, but you can do it before. So why are they telling what you can do? Because they're inferring what you can't do. So sign on the dotted line, and you're also understanding that you can't do certain things anymore. So we have you under our control. It's subtle, but you got to read between the lines. And these pastors have had to make a decision. And they see the handwriting on the wall. And those who sign the dotted line, hey, they are there to lead you to slaughter. Seriously, that's why they have to remain quiet on certain things, because there's so many things going on in the society today that some of these pastors, if they're really about it, they should be infuriated and leading the people to truth and righteousness and making some kind of change, but they're handcuffed. Yet the people don't see that. I don't understand it. And that's why for me, I just can't. I know religion is there, but spirituality is there for me, and I have to study and study for myself. But like you said, you have to keep that divine word in your heart, because not only will Holy Scripture be taken away from us physically, but in a sense, it's already been altered and taken away from us already, in a sense. So what are we reading?
Exactly. And so we've got to wonder, those who still follow the Bible, I'd go a step further to make sure, and actually you learn this in theology school or any kind of biblical training, or you're supposed to learn this if you're at an accredited school, put it that way. You don't just read the Bible, you read it, you read a scripture or two, or actually you pray first and ask for guidance in what you're about to read. And then you read it. You may read it 2 or 3 more times and try to digest it at just a basic level. And then you meditate on it. You may go away 2 hours, 2 days, however long it is, and just ask, okay, God, show me what it is I need to get out of that. Help me understand this in the right way. What is it you're trying to share with me in this particular passage? So you don't just read it and look the words up in the dictionary, whatever it says in the dictionary, that's what it means, and go with it. Because as Bob just demonstrated with Romans 13, stuff's finna get, if it hasn't already been, it's been twisted, and it's probably going to be twisted a whole lot more and expounded in such a way so that it's very clearly your mandate to do whatever government says do, whether it's right, wrong, or indifferent, whether it's biblical or not, whether it goes with your religious beliefs or not. You're going to mandate it to do. And your pastor's going to be standing there saying, well, yep, because look, the Bible says right here in Romans 13, you got to do what the government says do. It's like they're goats. Wow. And and this just is coming to me. The whole Baphomet thing is supposed to be a goat, an androgynous goat, mixed gender, male and female. That's a symbol of Satanism or whatever the case may be. He's a goat. And goats are a certain type of goat. He's trained to mingle with the sheep, to befriend the sheep. And so when it's time to lead them to go be slaughtered, the goat is the one that leads the sheep to the slaughter. Pastors are like goats. Well, churches are like goats. I won't just say pastors. Well, church buildings, church groups, some of them. It's guys, we gotta wake up. We gotta wake up. Um, we know I've talked quite a bit about the particular church that I've had dealings with. Um, and when you get to a point that when you begin to speak out, these churches, when you know that a church has filed false documents, they've caused false documents to be filed and reports and things like that, when all kinds of chaos and mayhem and illegalities and fraud and um, just unethical stuff is going on, and you speak up, and the church leadership is okay with trying to annihilate you, basically, wake up, people. And here's the kicker. If the authorities choose to turn a blind eye to it, there's another puzzle piece. How is it that the authorities are okay with people complaining about what's going on, and some of the things these churches are doing are clearly on the books illegal? I'm talking crime. I know in my state, I've looked up personally and seen several things that are actual directly crimes. So how is it then, if the authorities turn a blind eye to it, then they don't have to? It's like, wow, wow, wow. And then, excuse me, I got a text real quick. Okay. And so it's people, we got to wake up. We got to wake up. These pastors are not God. They are not God. And if they are God or some variation with a little g, then we see these little g gods have sold us out to the government. And we're going to have to we have to do some things different. We've got to do some things different. When the church is controlling your finances to the point of telling you how to spend your money, or in some cases, I know somebody actually gives their money, their entire check to the church, and the church divvies it out to them. Something's wrong. When do we wake up? When do we use common sense? But yeah, I know I was talking about that before my text came in, that there are laws on the books against a lot of what is going on, state and federal. So if the authorities are turning a blind eye and they only maybe go after the mega churches, um, and I believe there's because there's some pressure with that. There's been a lot of pressure with how much resources these mega churches are pulling in, and because now we've tapped the people so much, now we're going to tap these mega churches, start pulling that money in, because again, the government's goal is to pull all the resources, so when whatever happens, people are not in position to fight back in any way. So that's, I believe, why all of this uh, talk about mega churches and question their finances, New Birth and World Changes, Creflo Dollar. New Birth was Bishop Eddie Long. You got Joyce Myers, Bishop Jakes, Benny Hinn, and just a lot of the mega churches. Question them, it was about finances, and they were under pressure. The government didn't particularly care how much the people were being fleeced. It didn't care whether the people were actually being served and how many people are being served. And the next question becomes, is that even measurable? Are the churches even measuring how many people they're serving and in which capacity? Are they tracking the ones who come in today, broken, maybe drug addicted, homeless, who knows, whatever, and then over a period of 18 months, that person is clean and sober. That person has gotten a job, and they're now got a place to stay. And let's use the example. He's a man, and he's reconnected with his ex-wife and his kids, and he's trying to be a dad again. Are they even tracking that and showing that progress? Or does the government even care if they're tracking it? Probably not. So those are the things we need to think of, because at this point, overall, the church is serving the purpose to control the people, to keep us at a disadvantage economically, socially, politically, to keep us where we're not meeting and interacting and putting our resources, our thoughts, our minds, all of our ideas together to affect a positive change. The churches are doing that. A lot of the churches are doing it, and government doesn't care. It's like the United States government is almost like a giant Ponzi scheme, but of course blacks at the bottom, and we giving up everything, have been doing it for years and years and years, and we think eventually we'll move up,
Conference
and it hadn't
unlocked.
happened yet. And then the church is like
Conference
a giant
locked.
Ponzi scheme within the U.S. Ponzi scheme. At first it was money, but now we're giving up of ourselves. We're giving up of our time. We're giving up of our families. We're even turning our children over to these churches who are documenting whatever they need to document and getting prepared to turn our kids over to the government. What's wrong? The people are continually being groomed to trust the pastor and their word over their own thoughts and their own rationale. It's use common sense. You use your own thoughts. As we were just saying, study yourself. Get your whatever your spiritual divine path is. And again, I say it that way because this is not about Jew, Islam, Christianity, Catholicism. It's not a specific religion. We all have to get there. You study for yourself. You ask God or your ancestors or your spirits, whatever name you call it, the universal God, I think is what Dick Gregory used to call it. Ask them. Impart into you the information that you need, the wisdom that you need, the strength that you need. Because, yeah, you might visit churches here and there, but you feel like you're not getting it all. So many hands have tainted. There's so many tares amongst the wheat that has been sown that you need guidance to make sure you're doing it the right way. And when stuff hits the fan, bottom line, I hate to say it, but they're leading us to the slaughter, and what's going to happen? They're going to report who has weapons, probably what kind of weapons. They're going to report who has resources stashed, whether it's money, whether it's food, whether it's bug-out bags, bunkers, whatever it is. Excuse me. They're going to report who's going to be compliant with the government and who's going to resist. They're going to report who can be used for the various resources and skills and stuff that they possess. If you're a welder, okay, well, yeah, brother so-and-so, he's a good welder. He's the best we've got. So they're going to come and take you and make you go weld whatever it is they need welding. You'll be forced to do it. You won't have a choice in the matter. And it may be something along the lines of, well, if you want to have a morsel of bread today, you're going to weld this entire building. So you'll work 8 hours and get a morsel of bread. Some craziness like that. Pay attention to the vehicles that are around you. The UN, Russian, I don't know if they're military or agents. Let's just call them agents. They're all over this country. They're embedded all over the United States. These white vans and white SUVs, Suburbans, and all that driving around. UN, Homeland Security, and other foreign governments over here acting as agents in our country. People better pay attention. Wake up, wake up. And it's just sad. It's just really, really, really sad. But I'm to the point now where it's time to take action. Because your pastor, he's helped, your church has helped dumb you down. They've got you thinking they're God. They've got you deterred from thinking for yourself. You can't even, half the time we can't think for ourselves. Not only we, but some people are not thinking for themselves. We know the school has already limited how much thinking we can do because the kids are not being taught to think. They're being taught to memorize, regurgitate for a test, and keep it moving to the next grade, where they're going to struggle again because they didn't get the foundational thinking and analyzing at a level before. So now they're struggling to memorize, regurgitate, spit it back out for the test, go to the next level. So, and they've been passed through life doing all of this. So they're not thinking critically and analytically to the level that they need to. Those of us who, and it's sad, but anybody who's, I'd say maybe age 40 and up, we don't get to relax. We thought we were about to relax. Because the younger generations were compromised with the education system. So now we have to step it up. And now that we realize what's going on, we've got to start training them to think and fight. We can't pass the baton to them because they're not able to catch it. So once we start prepping them strategically and with intention, not just prepping them to fight the guy down the street, not just prepping them just to go get a job, but prepping them to think and see these things for themselves and how to respond in different ways that benefits them and their communities, then once they're there, then we're able to pass that baton to them and sit back and let them take over and carry the next generation. But it's as far as I'm concerned, it's time out. It's time to start doing for ourselves. It's time to open those businesses. It's time to support each other in business. If you're paying it the $2 more for some particular product, or if you have to drive an extra 10 minutes to get to a black business to support them, do that. Why? Because chances are the black business owners don't have the same cost of goods that Walmart or even the Asians have. And then let's just say a hair supply store. I won't call it a beauty supply, but a hair supply store. A black-owned hair supply store is not going to get the same pricing for their products wholesale as the Asians are. That's just the way they're doing it. It's inherent in there right now, and so you spend the extra dollar for your container of hair grease or for your perm or whatever it is you're buying in there. Why? Because the Asians are going to eventually see we're pulling our money from them because they're not giving us their money back. And I'll give a quick example. My kids were coming up and they were raising money for something, and I can't remember what it was. Oh, I know what it was. They had gotten a partial scholarship for an international trip. And we needed to raise, I think, $1,500 was the difference. And that was just to cover their medical insurance, their cash money, and some other little, like, odd incidental things that technically they didn't really have to have, but you don't want to send your middle schoolers to another country without these things in place. So, and I didn't have it all so we were raising money, and this hair supply store that we shopped at frequently, because I had girls, and so I kept their hair braided, kept my hair braided. I did hair for other people. They wanted sew-ins and all of that, and so I did all of that, and this is where I frequented. So I went to them and I asked them, showed them the documentation, what was going on, a letter that the school had done up for the kids when they're asking for donations, verified that it's legitimate, everything. And this particular place that I frequented said no. And I was just so shocked. I'm not even $5. And she said, no, we don't support stuff like that. And I looked at her and I said, well, what do you mean you don't support stuff like that? No, get out. We don't support stuff like that. And I said, well, ma'am, I come in here every Saturday. I'm buying product for one of my clients, or I've even brought some clients in here to buy product from you, spending hundreds every month in your products, and my kids are asking for a donation. You can't even give them $5. So she got mad and just kind of went into a rant, get out. And I said, okay, no problem. And of course, I shared that information with everyone I knew and told them, bottom line, don't buy there anymore. From that day to this one, I've not walked back into that establishment. I would drive further and pay more money and more gas to go somewhere else than to frequent this place, which was literally on the corner from my house. But then I shared it with what happened with the guy at the convenience store, maybe like, a couple doors down. I told him what happened. And he was just so flabbergasted. He's like, what? Really? I know you. Everybody knows, if you come in here all the time, you get to know your customers. And if I don't mind, I can give you $5 or $10 for this. This is a good event, first of all. I see you. I see your kids. I don't see them getting into trouble, and you're always well spoken and mannered. And so I'm going to support it, and you're going to continue to support me. But if you've been spending all this money there and they don't, and so of course that store owner helped me to spread the word about what occurred with that particular location, that particular hair supply store. But I say that to say, see, they're going to get our money, and they're going to build their Chinatowns in every major city, every city in the United States. They're in every arena of business, every segment, every niche, if you will. And they're getting that money and they're sending that money back home, or they're buying up the property. A lot of them are in real estate now, and they're buying up as much property as they can. A lot of them, if they're not the realtors, they're the actual owners, behind the scenes, hidden behind some corporate name, whatever the case may be. And so what's happening? And they've got their attorneys to drop the paperwork the right way, et cetera, et cetera. When it's all said and done, we've given them all of our money. They've gone on what they've built for them, and we're still nowhere. So drive the extra 10 minutes or 15 minutes, or in one case, I was driving across town, and I wasn't going as frequent then. I'd kind of save my trips and kind of buy up in bulk when I go over there, because it was quite a bit further. But I would make the 30-minute drive to a black supply store and buy up my stuff when I got there and come back to my end of town. That's what we've got to start doing, supporting our businesses. If you know of a meat market or a laundromat, or even if it's just a gaming hall where it's a bunch of arcade games for your kids to play, if it's one owned by a black person, you want to support them first. Encourage your kids. Okay, well, let's go here and let's play here, instead of going to spend your money in Disney World. Because Walt Disney, he dead and gone, but his kids don't care about your kids. Lend money to each other at reasonable rates. If I need $200 for whatever, well, $200 is a small amount of money. Those are the kinds you probably just lend without interest. But if I needed $1,000 just for whatever, and I needed it over a 6-month period, and I'm going to pay it back in installments, why can't I go to someone in my family or someone, another black person that I know, and borrow that $1,000? We negotiate the interest, the payments, we negotiate all the terms, write it up on a piece of paper, sign it, and have it notarized. That's a binding contract. If we're both over 18, it's a binding contract. And so what happens? You've gotten the money that you need. You're paying a reasonable interest. You can't expect it for free. But, no, you don't want to pay 20% interest or 18 or 19% interest either. That's not fair. And even if you do it with a bank at 12% interest, you're not getting anything off of that 12% interest. You may as well keep it in the community. Do it with someone that you know, so that 12% interest is going into his pocket. And then he can turn around and support a black business. So the extra $2 he pays for, or his wife pays for the hair product that she's getting, it's kept within the community. So the money's circulating with us much for that many more times. It's time for us to start buying land if we haven't. Establish communities of like-minded people. Because you can't do it all, and we're so far behind, as far as I'm concerned, that we've got to start helping each other get caught up, so to speak. So if you've got some people, and it might not necessarily be your family, but if you've got people that you can commune with, so to speak, get together. If 50 people put up $1,000 a piece, you've got $50,000. So you can go buy, depending on where you're going to buy it, you can buy a couple acres and do what? Start growing some vegetables, or grow some vegetables. Maybe if it's zoned the right way, and if it's in the right location and all, you can put some sort of retail shop or something on it, or put some homes on it. Put some trailers on it. Trailers are a lot cheaper to put in than a house. And start living together, sharing your resources, sharing the and not just your financial resources, but your physical resources, your talents, your skills. Not everyone knows how to cut trees for firewood. So if you've got two men in the, let's say if it's a community of 10 families, you've got two men in there who know about wood and all of that tree logging and stuff. Let them be the ones to kind of oversee that, dealing with getting the trees cut, turn it into dollars at the paper mill, save some of it for firewood so that you guys are not spending a whole lot of money in gas and electric. If you got someone that knows how to install the solar panels, get those put in. Tap your own resources. Pay each other for the skills that they have. Keep the money in the community. Stop buying, excuse me, all of your stuff outside of the community. There's strength in numbers, but we've got to be willing to do it. And I know that's the point where I'm at. I'm kind of at a point where you can talk and talk and talk and tell people it, but if people are not willing to take the step, then at some point we got to get to a point where, okay, well, you know what? Then, well, I've got to start doing for me. And that's where I'm getting. I'm kind of getting to that point. Several things I brought up to people, but we're still too scared. We've gotten in our heads that, no, these things need to be done through the government, by the government, or through the church, or through some other organization that's been approved by the government. There are laws in place. There are policies, procedures, the Code of Federal Regulation. All these things are in place guiding you. Didn't I just read Romans say we're supposed to follow the governmental law? Well, all those things are governmental laws or policies. And so we can use those, follow those to better ourselves. Take the time to know what they are and use them. And in a nutshell, that's my spill. Bottom line, we are being led. We collectively are being led to slaughter. Spiritually, we've been talking about that. We've been talking about the chaos and the decadence and the foolishness that's going on in the churches. People sleeping with each other. Pastors sleeping with wives of their members and husbands, deacons sleeping with this one and that one, and church secretary, she's sleeping with everybody, and they got your money, and even sleeping with your kids, and just all kinds of foolishness going on. We've been talking about that, so they're already leading people into all kinds of craziness: pornography, gambling, drugs, getting prostitutes, pastors out there getting prostitutes, taking the guys with them. They all riding together. They're supposed to be going to McDonald's to grab a bite to eat. It's late. They've been at the church working, cleaning, and who knows what. All right, let's go grab something to eat. Oh, well, along the way, you happen to see a couple prostitutes on the side of the road. Hey, well, you know what? You can get a quick blowjob, whatever the case may be. And you're doing it, and you're introducing the man in your car to do it. And then, it gets just like that wildfire starts to spread. And the next thing you know it, now you got all these other people who are being led astray. So we're being led to the slaughter spiritually and physically. Bottom line, we've been duped, so to speak, and our own people have done it to us, are continuing to do it to us. The sad part is, at what point do we wake up and realize it? And at what point do we wake up and realize it's not even at the church level anymore? It is our brothers and our sisters now. It's been going on with the government. It's been going on in the churches and other organizations. It's to the point now where our brothers and sisters are selling us out, or leading us to the slaughter. Our parents are selling us out and leading us to slaughter. At what point do we wake up? Because it's very clear, if your brother or your sister is selling you out, then they're no longer your brother and sister, maybe biologically, but you have to separate yourself from them. And these are some tough choices. If you want to survive all of this foolishness, people got to start making some tough choices. You may have to walk away from a sibling. And I know me personally, that'd be hard. I've got 7 brothers and 4 sisters, and then all their husbands and wives and 5.5, well, I guess 0.5 because she's not quite a sister-in-law yet. 5.5 sisters-in-laws and another two brothers, and I've got a bunch of siblings. So if I had to walk away from them, that would be difficult. But if it comes down to me or them, that's what it comes down to. And these are the questions we've got to start asking ourselves and start looking at things. But that particular article that I'd seen, not your article, YouTube video, it's something along the lines of uh, come out of the churches, the FEMA connection with the church, or something along those lines. But it is by Truth Unveiled 777. I think it's his channel. And feel free to go look it up. And actually, Lance, if you can, put a link to it maybe. I don't know if YouTube will allow it, because he shows the actual documentation of that training that I referenced, and some other federal documents that talk about pretty much how the church is leading us to slaughter. He kind of breaks it down, which was so awesome. It's something I've been thinking about doing and just hadn't gotten around to doing it, and stumbled on it, and he's already done it. So there's no need to reinvent that wheel. Bottom line, in anything that takes away your right to autonomy, to independence, to bearing arms, to thinking for yourself, to acting for yourself, making decisions for yourself, is not in your best interest. And we've got to get that. And churches are there. They're not allowing us to do these things in a lot of cases. And it's almost like they're an arm of the government. So that's kind of my spill. And I think Lance just disappeared for a minute probably. And so that's what I wanted to share with you all. It's time out for playing around, guys. It's time out for playing around. Things are going to be coming down the pipelines. And whenever it happens, you want to be prepared, or as prepared as you can be. As long as we are here, we have to do what we've got to do, and we've got to do for us. No one else is going to do for us. They've already shown us that. So when do we step up? Now, one thing I am going to mention is that it's time that we actually start strategizing. Maybe it's time for us to have actual conference calls where we start strategizing, maybe in the different parts of the country, and meeting locally to talk about what plans can be implemented. Maybe look at having some communities, one in the Northeast, maybe the Carolina area, and then again in the Southeast, down in Florida, come across, and maybe Texas, Mississippi, somewhere in that range, go on out to California, Midwest, up in the Northwest, and just kind of all around the country. Because we've got to start hooking up with each other and getting in position to strategize for some of these businesses. A lot of us don't have the money. A lot of us don't have the resources, the collateral to put up. The way it works today, you can't get a business loan unless you prove that you don't need the business loan. We know that's one of those catch-22s. It's to keep us out, pretty much. So we may have to be strategic in how we work that business loan application. If it means partnering with someone who has a financial portfolio and a net worth that positions you to get the loan, and even if it's just a silent partner, and then, have an exit strategy of when they're going to come off of it, or when you're going to dissolve the partnership and it becomes your own business after you get the loan and get it established, et cetera. You do those things. But we've got to be creative with it, and we have to start using our resources, because they're not going to give it to you. And we see for sure whatever you do obtain, the churches are in position to help take it away from you. Government's getting his percentage, church is getting their percentage, and you, your spouse, and your children are struggling with what's left. And as I think, how's Dr. Phil put it, how's that working for you? Chances are it's not. And that's pretty much what I wanted to share with you all. Bottom line is that we are being led to slaughter. Think about the experiments. The Tuskegee experiment I reference a lot just because the church was very clearly involved in encouraging those men to participate in that experiment. But the government's been doing a whole lot more experiments on us. And read Romans 13. Read it in a newer version of the Bible, the Living Translation, New Living Bible Translation, NIV, some of the newer ones. And if you can, go back to the Geneva 1599, the 1611, and some of those earlier translations. And you will see the change. You will see the difference. And those are the things that you got to wonder about. So that being the case, question, comments, feedback, let us know what you think. We're very interested to know how we can take this to a next level. Let's start turning this into a positive. It's been a negative for us all this time. Let's start turning it into a positive. I think I know someone said, don't remember who it was, it said, great ideas are born out of need. So we have a need. We've got a lot of needs. Now it's time to put our heads together and start coming up with ideas, start developing some plans, and getting those needs met one by one. That being the case, you guys have a great night, and we'll speak to you soon. Bye.
Make sure to check out the boldest blog at lancescurv.com and follow Scurv on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube under Lance Scurv.